could you give us a crash course again with some of the celestial timekeepers and so on?
Okay. Yeah, I just created a graphic this time just to hopefully try to explain it a little bit better. But so can you see that?
Yes, I can. If you want to blow it up, you can if you want.
Okay. Yeah, I'll zoom in. All right, so this first part is just showing that the lunar calendar and also the solar calendar.
Okay.
And the Bible actually shows there's two calendars because we have two clocks. You know, you have the solar calendar, which is the sun, and you have the Hebrew calendar, which is the lunar calendar. So our Gregorian calendar follows the solar calendar. The Hebrew calendar follows the lunar calendar. And the lunar calendar goes through 12, there's 12 cycles, you know, like when the moon does a full cycle, it goes through all its phases.
Yeah.
Right. So if you do that 12 times, that's equal to like a lunar year. And that if you do 12 times the average lunar month, you get 354 days, 0.367056. And if you compare that with the solar calendar, you get 365.2422. So they aren't perfectly in sync, which is why Mr. Campion has that mathematical formula that basically syncs up the two calendars.
Interestingly enough, that would be off by 10 point something.
Yeah, it's rough, and I think it's going to change. You know, I don't know if it's always like that, but yeah, 365. It's about a 10, 11-day difference. Yeah. So what this means is the Earth is rotating around the sun. That's you know, that would be the solar calendar, and then the moon going through 12 different of its cycles around the Earth would be the lunar year. So it's just a different way. It's a different calendar. It's not the same type of calendar.
Question, Carl, but does
Yeah.
the moon does not orbit around the Earth, or does it? It just doesn't change its position.
Well, the sun, the moon and the Earth both orbit around the sun, but the moon just goes through phases around the Earth.
So the Earth spins, but the moon is kind of fixed, right?
Um,
I don't
well,
know.
yeah, I guess I'm not sure. I guess if the Earth is spinning, then yeah, that's why. Yeah, maybe so. That's why we would have. I'm
I'm
not an
because
astronomy expert in
exactly.
that area, but okay, so then we know from the Exodus to the Jordan, that would be that's 40 years from when they left Egypt
Got to
all the
be
way.
the same, very self same day of 430 years.
Well, that's from when Jacob entered Egypt.
Right.
430 years later is when they left. So you go so from the Exodus all the way to the you know when we go to the end of the 40-year wilderness sojourn,
And they
you know
cross River
when they're going
Jordan.
to cross, yeah, when they're about to cross over Jordan.
Mhm.
Actually, when they cross over, we're going to find it's exactly 40 years because you'll see the Exodus Passover was on Nisan 1447 BC. And the verse that says that would be right here, Exodus 12:2 and 6. This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you, and ye shall keep it unto the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. So this is letting us know that Passover is on the very first month, and it's on the 14th day of the month.
It's 1 month, 14 day, right?
Right. And we call that first month Nisan, but it's also called a Bib. Um, where, you know, that's the month that was the month where God established this new calendar.
I should be
So
taking.
now so now Passover is always going to occur on Nisan 14. That's the date for Passover.
Okay.
So 1447, and then we read if you go 40 years later, we read after they cross over the Jordan River, they celebrate another Passover. That's also on Nisan 14, and that's Joshua 5:10. And the children of Israel encamped in Gilgal and kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month at even in the plains of Jericho. So that's letting us know, based off the lunar calendar, that from Nisan 14 all the way to Nisan 14 and 1407, that's exactly 40 years.
Hmm.
So to the day as far as the lunar calendar.
So it's clean.
Yeah, it's pretty clean. But notice the Gregorian dates are different. The
Right.
Gregorian dates, so you'll see Passover was March 21st in 1447 BC. You can see that right there. And then right here, Passover is March 29th. So there's actually an 8-day difference when it comes to using the Gregorian versus the lunar in this case.
Okay.
And so Mr. Campion had discovered that there's actually 8 days. Um, you can kind of map out those 8 days. But anyways, so now we'll look at the solar calendar and how that fits into this. So they left, so Nisan 14 was when they celebrated the Exodus Passover. But the Bible lets us know that the day after Passover, that's when they left Egypt. So you'll read that here. Let's see. Right here, Numbers 33:3. And they departed from Ramesses in the first month on the 15th day of the first month,
Hmm.
on the morrow after the Passover. The children of Israel went out with an high hand. So that lets us know that the very next day on Nisan 15, that's when they left Egypt from Ramesses. So now we're at Nisan 15, but now we're going to focus on the solar calendar here because Mr. Camping had pointed out that God's highlighting this day after they left. So that would be, if this is March 21st, then Nisan 14 is March 22nd. So now we're going to go from March 22nd of 1447 BC, and exactly 40 years later, Mr. Camping plugged in March 22nd of 1407.
Hmm.
So this would be exactly 40 years using the solar calendar, right? And that would be the first day that they lodge at Jordan. Now, to see if this all fits, um, to see if that's accurate, right? If it fits, he provided verses in the Bible that shows we could kind of walk through to see if we'll get to see over here we have March 29th up
Yeah.
here,
Yes.
right there. Well, if March 22nd is the true date, Gregorian date that they lodged at Jordan, then we have to walk through the scriptures to see if we can land on that date for Passover.
I think I see
And
what.
yeah. So sure enough, when they lodge at Jordan, exactly 8 days later, they celebrate Passover. You can walk through the scriptures and it takes us to March 29th. So it basically confirms actually the calculation of the celestial clock.
This is amazing
So,
because on my birthday, which is the 27th of the month, right?
mhm.
7th of every month, it's always my birthday. But in this case, the time span between like a 40-year time frame could have different numbers, right? If I understand that correctly.
Well, here it's going 40 years using the lunar calendar is different than going 40 years using the solar calendar. So the lunar calendar here, it's only when you go from Nisan 14 to Nisan 14, that's exactly 40 years, lunar years, I guess you would say, 40 lunar years. But here, this would be 40 solar years. And so God basically this is showing that God's implemented both the solar and the lunar calendar in the Bible,
Gotcha.
not just the lunar. So we can't just, and I know a lot of people have been focusing on the Hebrew calendar, but this is showing God's uses both. And it makes sense because he created the sun and he created the moon, right? So they're two different types of clocks in a sense. So, and then I'll just show you this last thing. So so Mr. Camping, I think what he did is he made an assumption. You have to start out with the assumption, okay, if they left March 22nd, exactly 40 years later, they lodge at Jordan. So we have to say that. So let's just assume that was March 22nd, and we'll see if it fits. Because keep in mind, he had already the calculation March 29th as Passover for that year. And so if we're starting with March 22nd and going exactly 40 years in the solar calendar, and they're lodging at Jordan on March 22nd, we need to see if the Bible will support us, if it will allow us for Passover to land on, if it lines up. Like if this is off, this March 22nd, if that shows March 20th or 19th or 18th, and the scriptures doesn't allow us, we know like this is our endpoint, March 29th. We have to get to March 29th. And so I hope this isn't too confusing. I know it's a
But my question would be if someone were to ask me, what is the purpose of just having that 40-year calculation on the Gregorian side, now that we have both time frames, what would be the spiritual benefit of me getting these two dates on the Gregorian side, now that we have the lunar calendar calculation and the solar calendar calculation, okay, they're off. Well,
Mhm.
what's the ultimate goal that we are looking for?
Well, because God has two calendars, like for example, when we say Noah entered into the ark, or
Mhm.
when we say May 21 aligns with ER 17, that's a lunar calendar aligning with the solar calendar. So I guess the benefit would just be to see how God keeps track of time using both systems, both
Got
calendars.
it.
And it's basically to prove that God does use the solar calendar in the Bible. I think that's
So
essentially.
we could use the solar calendar to kind of confirm if the lunar calendar is correct.
Yeah, yeah, they both if they're synced up, if we're right about our math, essentially. Because keep in mind, so look at this date, March 21st, and look at this date, March 29th. Now, if I go here on this the tool here, this is just math that can be done on paper and pen. If I type in 1447 BC, it's calculating Passover to be March 21st
Mhm.
of the year of the Exodus.
In our Gregorian calendar.
Right. Right, using the solar calendar. Now, if I type in 1407, it calculates Passover to be March 29th.
Mm.
That's an 8-day discrepancy,
Right.
right? So if Mr. Camping's right about his assumption, where if March 21st is Passover and they left the day after Passover, March 22nd, he's going to see, all right, let's see if the solar calendar fits within the Bible. So we start with March 22nd, and we're going to go exactly 40 years later to when they lodged at Jordan, and he's going to see if it fits. Let's see if we can make it fit where our end point will land on March 29th, right? And so when we do that, we find, let's see, I think it's in Joshua 3. The other website's down that I normally use. So I
Nice.
have to use this one. So God gives some details here. So in the morning, Joshua rose early in the morning and they removed from Shittim. There's a verse in Numbers that lets us know Abel Shittim was their last encampment. And they came to Jordan. And it also let us know that this basically happened in the same day because Abel Shittim is very close to Jordan. So this is still, so Mr. Kempy's like, okay, could this be March 22nd, right? And he and all the children of Israel, and he and all the children of Israel and lodged there before they passed over. So now God's letting us know they're going to be camping out there. And it came to pass after 3 days. So if this happened on March 22nd, 3 days later,
Mhm.
would be March 24th. Now let me explain. Mr. Campion said when it says after 3 days, it's better understood as at the end of 3 days. So
Right.
March 22nd has to be counted as that first day. March 23rd would be the second day. March 24th would be the end of 3 days. So that takes us to March 24th. Remember, the goal is to see if we can land on March 29th, because that's what the math is showing. So here we're already at March 24th. Okay, that the officers went through the host and they commanded the people, saying, when you see the ark of the covenant of Jehovah your God, and the priest that the Levites bearing it, then you shall remove from your place. All right, if we just scroll down, and Joshua said unto the people, sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. Okay, now that's letting us know that's going to be March 25th, tomorrow, because we're on March 24th. And Joshua spake unto the priests, saying, okay, they took up the ark. And Jehovah said unto Joshua, this day will I begin to magnify thee in the sight of Israel. And then let's see. We got one more clue to see what day this is. I think it's the very next chapter. Okay. So we know that the Passover is gonna, I mean, when they cross over Jordan, we know that's gonna occur on March 25th. Let's go to the next chapter. And this lets us know the very day. And it came to pass and the people came out of the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month. Okay, now God's giving us, we know this is March 25th because we just walked it through. But now God is giving us the lunar calendar here. This is the Hebrew calendar, the 10th day of the first month. So we started with March 22nd. They lodged for 3 days. 1, 2, 3. On the morrow, Joshua said they're going to cross over. We're at the 25th, and look, that's Nisan 10. Remember that verse just told us that's the 10th day of the month. So we know it syncs up with the Bible, this understanding, right? And then we know Passover occurs on Nisan 14. So that means 4 days later, they celebrate Passover. And what do you know? 1, 2, 3, 4, March 29th, right there. So it just fits perfectly,
How do you know it's 4 days later that they celebrated the Passover? Is that just
Because
because?
remember in the Bible, we know if we're on Nisan 10, Passover is always on Nisan 14. Remember we just read that verse. And the people came up out of the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month. That's Nisan 10. We know from the Bible Passover is always on Nisan 14. And just to further prove this, we could just go over here and it lets us know they celebrate Passover
See, so
right
I
here.
understand what you're saying now. Now that we have that established Hebrew date, we have it already calculated to the Gregorian date, so we know we just have to add the difference.
Yeah, because they're not perfectly synced up. Now, and the children of Israel encamped in Gilgal and kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month at even in the plains of Jericho. And then what's interesting, it says, and they did eat of the old corn of the land on the morrow after the Passover. You notice when they celebrated Passover in Egypt, right? It says on the morrow they left. And so again, God's highlighting the morrow after Passover. And if you look on the calendar, the morrow after Passover would be Nisan 15. And what does that land on? That lands on March 31st, which I thought was interesting because that's the same day where Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, March 31st. And for some reason, God is highlighting the fact that they ate of the old corn of the land on the
Hmm.
morrow after Passover. Why add in that detail? So,
Disciples eating the corn and they were complaining. And
yeah, well, this is the last day that they have to eat manna because look, and the manna ceased on the morrow, right? On the morrow after they had eaten of the old corn of the land.
right.
So again, now the manna ceased in on the morrow after they ate of the old corn of the land. So I believe that would be April 1st. April 1st. And then if you kind of just keep walking it through, it
Hmm.
appears that it's one sequence of events after another. And I think by the time you get to the walking around Jericho, I believe that the walls of Jericho fall, I think on the 7th.
I see. And
It
that's
all appears to be in order. Like you
right.
could just keep going. Like, okay, if the morrow after they ate the old corn of the land, see, and the manna ceased on the morrow after they had eaten the old corn of the land, that would be March 31st. Sorry, that would be April 1st. So if that's April 1st, then you kind of just keep going. This is when Joshua meets the man with the sword in verse
Right.
13, 14. And then as soon as you get to chapter 6, it just goes right into it. Now Jericho was straightly shut up because the children of Israel, none went out, none came in. There appears to be no passage of time, and now God's giving them instruction. You're going to go around Jericho 6 days,
Hmm.
and just from everything you read, and then God lets us know. Okay, and Joshua rose up early in the morning. So this would be uh, April 2nd, I believe. He rose up early in the morning. If the previous chapter is April 1st, and this is when they're going around, and they go around for 6 days. So you can kind of just follow it through. And it came to pass on the seventh day that they arose early about the dawning of the day. So it's like very detailed with all these time references.
God hides that seemingly information that doesn't seem to have relevance. Now it's hanging on the celestial clock confirmation. So
Yeah, and this would be in the way we can kind of confirm if we're on the right track is the syncing up of the solar and the lunar. And we saw that with this day right here. See, Mr. Camping's like, let's plug it in. Let's see if we can go from March 22nd of 1447 to March 22nd of 1407, right? And let's see if it fits. And sure enough, there's exactly 8 days that God maps out. There's 4 days of encampment, or 3 days of encampment. One day they cross over Jordan. That's 4 days. And then 4 more days they celebrate Passover. That's that 8 day difference that we see from March 21st to March 29th.
incidentally, Carl, some folks have issues with AI, and we'll close soon. You could have probably punched this into an Excel formula, right? If this means this and if this means that, you could probably punch that all in as well, right?
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, there might be a way to. to make sure. Sometimes it catches details that you might miss.
Right. So folks have a fear that, or, this is something that artificial intelligence is doing. It's far from it. Mr. Camping was able to, ascertain this information before. And I think God did that on purpose.
Yeah, this can all be done on paper. So here's the math right here. If you want to calculate Passover in 1447, it's just you can write it down right here.
Who's willing
Dividing.
to work? Who's got a pencil and paper who's willing to check this work? So
It's only 6 steps. There's only 6 steps. So I'll briefly explain them and then I'll let you close the program. So the first step is calculating how many years. So we have a fixed date of um, when they from the cross, right? That's our anchor date of Passover, and you can go any year. Uh,
do we have other anchor dates, or do we just want to use that one because it's the most significant?
Actually, we have May 21.
967 BC. That doesn't qualify?
Uh, sorry, say that one more time. Somebody was talking to me.
67 BC doesn't qualify as an anchor date?
What was the date?
967.
Uh, I don't know. That'd be interesting to look at. But we know 2011, I believe does because
Gotcha.
we have how many days from. So you could start with 2011 and the math is the same. You just work backwards from 2011 to 33 AD and it equals the same thing. But the cross is pretty foundational. So you can go from any year. So if we go to 1447, we're just calculating how many years from the cross to the Exodus. So you're going backwards, and that's what that equals right there. 1,479 years. You're multiplying that by the tropical year, and
Right.
that's telling you exactly how many days that is.
Got it.
540,193 days. 0.213800. That would just be a fraction of a day right there.
Quarter of a day almost.
Yeah, almost a quarter of a day. Yep. So that actually you can figure out how many hours right there. You can do the math and figure out it's almost about 6 hours. And then you can take that many days and divide it by the lunar month. So now we're taking days. So remember, we got the tropical year, divided it by how many years, and that gave us how many days. Now we're taking those days and dividing it. This is the solar calendar. That's how many days from the solar calendar. Now we're dividing it into the lunar calendar.
Okay.
That's that lunar calendar, and that's giving us how many months that is.
Gotcha.
And then from here, we take the fractional month, 0.66, 70, 41. And now that we have this fractional month, we need to figure out how many days is this month.
Right.
So that's the math to do that is you take the fractional month and you multiply it by the lunar month again. And that tells you that's 19.69 days, right? And then now that we have that figure, the 19.69 days, that's what this fractional month is. We can minus it against the lunar month again. And that will also give us the remaining days here. So if you add up these 2 days, it equals the lunar month. Adding the 19 and the 9, that'll give you the lunar month. But we
Gotcha.
take this final figure and we round it to 10 because it's close to 10. And so that lets us know how many days we go forward or backwards. And our fixed date is always March 31st. So remember, we went from March 31st on the cross. Now we're in March 31st of 1447. And now we can shift either forward or backwards. So if I go backwards 10 days, that would land on March 21. That's what we have for Passover. If I go forward 10 days, that lands on April 10th. But we can rule out April 10th because it doesn't match with the Bible. If I were to assume Passover, we go forward 10 days and try to map it out, it won't work with the Bible. I have done it. It won't work. So now I understand why Mr. Camping chose March 21st because it fits with the.
Vincent has a question, and we're running out of time, but I would like to know why are we left with two options? One for
Because it's a matter of figuring out Passover occurs after the spring equinox, and so you're just basically subdividing a lunar month. So you have 19 days here on one side, and you have about 10 days on this side. So it's a matter of do I go backwards? So you're taking this final figure, and do I go forward or backwards
I'm sure there's a common sense function. I'm just
Yeah,
trying to.
this is the shift because okay, we're going from March 31st of 33 AD to March 31st of 1447.
You only
So
have. You only have.
so
Well, I'll.
Gregorianly speaking,
Yeah.
Gregorianly speaking, this is the solar date. But because the moon isn't perfectly aligned with the solar, we saw that earlier. That's why we apply that shift. The moon is letting us know, okay, you need to apply a 10-day shift. That's why we're shifting.
Right.
We're just shifting that March 31st date, and that gets us in alignment.
Gotcha.
So the question is, how do you know to go forward or backwards? And you have to see which one fits with the Bible. The God, because God is letting us know in the Bible that in this case you do go backwards because that's what fits with the Bible.
Gotcha. And I think that would be in every case. But yeah, Vince, if you have anything you'd like to state before we close,
He's got to unmute himself.
it's got on mute, Vince.
Okay, so the lunar calendar and the um, both calendars, is that how they got to May 21st, 2011, and the second month, the 17th day?
Yeah, using the calculation, yeah, that's how we can determine that May 21 aligns with ER using that same function.
Okay, so
So we
what
don't have to
about,
rely on any outside, like the modern Jewish calendar, any tools online, you know.
okay, so what about 2033, the Passover? What would be the both calendar dates?
What would be for both?
Yeah,
Uh, okay, so you can just do a quick calculation. Do 2033, and that's letting us know that Passover lands on Nisan 14. This always calculates Passover. From there, you can map out the rest of the year. But that's April 14th. So if you look here, May 33. This is the calendar that just maps it all out. So if we go, so Passover lands on April 14th in 2033. And that would be Passover is always Nisan 14. So Nisan 14 would be the lunar calendar. April 14th would be the solar calendar. Because our Gregorian calendar is a solar calendar. Now, just one last thing.
okay,
Our Gregorian calendar is a solar calendar. You know, we follow 365 days. But the dates we're using, Gregorianly speaking, are adjusted to sync up with the celestial clock. Like you'll notice we don't have any February 29th
Right.
because those are added days because they have to add those leap years to keep up with that 2422 because it's not a perfect 365. So it's really a proleptic Gregorian calendar that's been synced up with the actual celestial clock.
Just look up that word proleptic. Someone asked, which is the correct one to follow? I believe based on this, the answer is both. Correct, Carl?
Yeah, yeah, we follow both exactly because there's two clocks in the sky. You have a lunar clock and you have a solar clock.
That's true. People watch the movies and people do use the sun. Very good.
Yeah, the Jews use the Hebrews use the lunar calendar, and we the Gregorian calendar uses a solar calendar. So we use both. There's two calendars, and I believe the stars may work as a third calendar. I'm not really sure how that works. I don't know if we've ever created a calendar based off that, but
So, Carl, I just thank God for you. I mean, having this resource available, I mean, I'm going to have to look at this again.
oh yeah, this stuff just came I mean based off the email Chris found with the math. I had known nothing about this, and
Right.
Mr. Camping didn't have any studies telling. I haven't found any of his studies telling you how to do the math. So it just so happened this one email that Chris happened to have saved allowed us to put this together. You know,
May God be magnified. And
yeah,
this is very, very interesting. Vince,
and having access to his timeline studies because that's how I knew to look at March, you know, and compare it to solar calendar because he talks about this thing.
I look forward to reviewing this again with everyone. I hope that we